What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another video. I'm here in Alabama and I live really close to the Black Warrior River, and the whole section of the Black Warrior River is amazing, especially for crappie. So I was out the other day, caught so many giants, and I'd like to show you guys kind of where I find these fish, what I'm looking for, and some of the techniques that I use to catch these fish. So we're gonna hop in the boat and I'm gonna show you. Let's go. All right, so we're in the boat, but a lot of my preparation actually starts in the house. And real quick, before we get to all this other good stuff in the boat, you know, it is September here in Alabama. The fishing for bass is fairly difficult, but if you can find the bait, you can catch tons of bass. So this time last year, I was fishing out at Holt and I was looking for spotted bass. I was trying to find you know, those creeks that had all the shad in it, the main lake where the shad, and I was stumbling across like these brush piles, these lay downs, these tree stubs, and it had fish all over them, and I thought they're bass, and I was throwing out and I was catching these giant crappie. And ever since I love to target crappie, I always have a crappie rod on deck just in case I, you know, scan over them. I turn back around and I make these casts. But like I said, you know, the first couple things I do prior to the day going fishing is maybe checking some YouTube videos. I watch tons of YouTube videos on bass fishing. I watch tons on crappie, the time of the year, the seasonal patterns. And, you know, I do some preparation at home first, and that's one of the things that I do. My second thing that I typically do is I actually have this app. I'll have all Humminbird units. I have this app, it's called the One Boat Network, and it took up the Fish Smart app. And what you can do is actually, you can do a lot of map study on your phone while you're sitting at home. And as you can see right here, I have tons of different locations. I have waypoints all over the place. And the coolest thing about this is that this is actually Bluetooth. So the waypoints that you create, you know, in the house, when you get out here on the water or when you come out here to your boat, you can actually sync this up and send all those waypoints directly to your units, which is so cool. All right, so done with the YouTube, put the phone down, I hop into the boat and I start rigging my rods with some of the baits that I'm probably gonna use, different weights, different colors, specifically to target these crappie. And, you know, we always prepare ourselves, and you guys know, even when you're prepared, when you get out to the water, you still have to make adjustments, and that's okay. So tie on all your favorite baits, rig up your rods, your reels, and get ready to head out to the water. And once I do that, I'm on the water, I get onto my electronics. So let's check this out. All right, so the first thing, and before I get started into this, let's go ahead and let's look at our depth highlights. And as you can see over here, I have 0 to 6 feet in red. I have 6 to 10 feet in green. I have 10 to 15 foot in yellow, and 15 to 20 foot in this purple. And the rest of it just like regular watercolors. But what this is going to do, it's going to allow, and if you look over here, it's going to allow your high spots to really pop out. I'm hoping that you guys can see this. So if I zoom in here, you can see my depth right here, that 15 to 20 foot is really popping out, and it's actually out kind of like on the main lake on this little channel swing area right here. And these are the type of areas that I'm actually going to scan. So I'm just going to scan these areas, and as you can see over here, this high spot right here in this purplish color, it's a very good location. That channel, it's right next to the channel, it's right next to this little pocket. So these areas are going to be the areas that I scan first. And when I scan these areas, I'm going to be looking for, you know, trees, laydowns, anything that these crappie can relate to. And a lot of the times you may see these empty trees and you still want to mark them, because just because they're empty now doesn't mean that they're not going to like load up with fish later in the day or maybe another day. So always mark structure and always come back and check it out. But These are the areas I will typically scan first, and let's see if we can scoot up and see if we can see some other spots. Now, we do see some other high spots, but it's not the highest spot out here on the main lake. So let's keep on scooting up. Here's a really good hidden spot right here. As you can see, it's a hard spot, but there's a lot of stuff out here, but the highest spot is right here. And if you can, you know, scan over that and see any kind of structure, you know, it may not only just hold crappie, but it could hold spotted bass, largemouth bass, catfish, whatever, especially if there's structure right here. And as you can see, this channel swing comes around this way, and it's almost like a ledge right here in front to where, you know, this would be a prime location to catch fish. So that would be an area that I would check. Here's another one right here with that channel right up against it right here. The highest spot right here. I would definitely scan over that. And just because you scan over here and there's nothing on the top of that, you know, still have your side imaging on and check these side areas right here too. You know, you may go over it and have your side imaging on and see something over here. And if you see something that looks really good, you can go over it with your down imaging and, you know, mark it or, you know, see if there's any kind of fish. Now, check this out right here. The yellow is actually a little bit more shallow, so there's a really good high spot right here leading back into one of these really, really good creeks. And then here's another high spot out here. They would be some ideal areas that I would definitely scan. And, you know, don't just scan it, just go over the middle of it. You might want to go down where the ledge is, go down over the middle of it, and kind of go around, and you'll find some really good structure. A lot of the times guys miss key structure, key locations, because they just go over the top of it and that's it. You go over the top of it and your side imaging only goes to 80 feet and, you know, a school of bass would have been over here at 100. You know, you miss those fish. So, you know, go around it just a little bit, go over it, zigzag just a tad bit and try to find those little gems. Here's another really good high spot right here. You know, here's a larger one right here in pink and purple, or I call it pink. It kind of looks purple. But it's another really good high spot. And, you know, this is all stuff that I'm going to actually mark on my phone while in the house prior to going out fishing. Here's another little high spot. And as you can see right there, let me see if I can zoom in. But it's got a yellow spot on it. So it's got a really good hard spot. Two of them actually. And I got a weight point right on it. And they would be some prime areas that I would check. So, you know, get on your maps, get on your, I mean, whatever you have, your Lake Master chip, or, you know, this is a Humminbird Lake Master VX. If you got Navionics, if you have, you know, your Garmin or your Lowrance, get on there, you know, do some map study prior to going out so you know exactly where to go. You know, it helps out tremendously. So you're not just kind of, you know, just going around and wasting a lot of time. Find these key locations. Here's a couple other little locations right here. You can see right here. Let's see if you can see it. But it actually has some really good hidden, actually, hard spots. You can see how small these little yellow dots are, but they are the hardest locations on this little shallow flat that would be really good for, you know, structure, or if there is structure, or even around this time of the year, you know, if they're relating to rock, that's a hard bottom. And, you know, you can find some really good fish on there. So that's kind of like my approach. And like I said, these crappie and these fish in general on the Holt Reservoir, the Holt section of the Black Warrior River, are just insane. They are huge. The crappie in here got me addicted to crappie fishing, but you know, hopefully these little tips help. Check this little gem out right here. This is a channel swing. It's got like a little pocket like out on the main river, and it's got a ledge right here, and it's got a hard spot right there, which would be amazing. And I think it's got another one right above it. Yeah, it's got like this little ledge right here. So, you know, there are some really good locations. And, you know, a lot of guys won't do this. They'll actually go and they'll beat the bank and, you know, find kind of structure along the bank, or maybe even some grass to crappie fish. But if you can find these gems out here and it's, you know, got some sort of structure on it, I mean, these crappie could be like state record size. I mean, I've caught them almost 3 pounds. I think maybe last year I did catch one that might have been like 3-1. But there are some giant crappie. The fight is amazing, especially on your light gear. So, you know, get on your maps, like I said, and, you know, find these key locations. Scanning and using your electronics is so important. I'll see guys that have thousands of dollars of electronics on it, and they don't even use them. I'm like, why are we here just beating the bank? You guys are wasting, you know, thousands of dollars to where you can be, you know, finding all these hidden spots and, you know, fish them and get really well. Here's a really good spot right here too. This is really high, and it's right on this channel swing. It's got a little pocket right here. It's not on the bank, it's actually underwater, so you know, you would never be able to see that unless you had your mapping. It's got a super high spot right there that would you know, create some stir up right there in the water, which could be really good, especially if they're running current. But you know, these are some of the things that I look for. Now let's head over to my baits and let's talk about some of the baits, and let's talk about how I work these baits. All right, so real quick before I get into all the gear and the baits and stuff like that, you know, having these electronics helps out tremendously. I have the 360 and I have the Mega Live, and I believe they are the best 1-2 punch that you can have on your bass boat, especially when you're in the front. Obviously your side imaging and your down imaging is very, very important when you're scanning, but when you're in the front of the boat, I mean, not just Mega Live, I mean, just any kind of live transducer in the front. It could be your Garmin, your Lowrance Active Target, or your Mega Live. I have Mega Live because I have that one boat network. And then the 360. I mean, it is insane. So, you know, I mark those key locations. If I mark it here, it actually sends it up to the front so I can see it. I can actually see it on my mapping up there, and I can see it on my 360. And what I typically do is, let's say the river is coming down. If I find a wake point right here, I actually go down the river and then come back up to the river, kind of nosing that wake point. You hit that spot lock, and if you're close enough, you can actually see that wake point on your 360. And on that 360, you will actually see that cover. You will actually see bits and pieces of the fish, just like little shadows. And then when you use your Mega Live, you can actually pinpoint that structure or those fish. You can get the exact cast. You can watch it go down into the brush pile or over the fish. And I mean, those two together are just amazing. If you don't have that and you have the money to get a 360 or any kind of live unit, I highly recommend it. It almost feels like you're cheating. And you know, a lot of guys, there's a lot of talk out there now in the industry, you know, with Bass, the National Bass League and MLF, you know, they're restricting the guys from it, which I do believe that it should come back, and it will come back after this year. But I mean, it's an amazing tool. If you know they're limited and you're not on one of those tours, you're not limited. So if you're out fun fishing, making YouTube videos, whatever, you know, if you have the money for these gadgets, I highly recommend them because they help out so much. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some of the baits and the techniques and my tackle. All right, I usually use a small light wire jig hook. I mean small, like I can literally bend this out just like that. Look how easy that was. I bent it all the way out. And the reason why I like these, and I talked about them before, is that when these get hung up, even with 4 or 6 pound line, you can literally pull it out and it will bend out. When you bring it back in, you can bend it back and still use this hook and get caught up throughout the entire day, and this hook still be really, really good. So a light wire hook is really good. It prevents you know, you retying a lot. But this is one of the little jig heads right here. I want to say this is by Mann's. I get it at a gas station right down the street, and they sell a lot of tackle. So this is maybe a Mann's jig head, light wire jig head. My second one is actually going to be maybe by Big Bite Bait, and it's actually got an eye on it. And this hook is a little different. It's got a different shape, a different bend to it. But I'll use this, and it's a little bit heavier. This is going to allow you to cast a little bit further. It's going to allow that bait to go down and work it on the bottom just a little bit better, keeping that bottom contact. So, you know, one of these jig heads that are a little bit heavier, and you know, it's got a little keeper on it. It's got that eye on it, and they typically work real well. And I mean, if you watch any kind of crappie video, you know, they change it up to the colors. Some chartreuse, even like a pink. So I got tons of different colors. I got different jigs. Here's an all black one, kind of like a rooster tail. So I got tons of different baits that I go through, and you know, they usually work very, very well. I go through with some of these, and it's usually I'm catching them. So let's talk about the soft plastics. I already talked about or showed you this one right here. I think this is maybe called like a stinger. I'm not really sure what it is, but I was at a little like trade market, and some guy was selling his baits. It was the Black Warrior baits, which was crazy because I had these baits for years, and when I was out fishing I pulled them out, and I'm like, I'm gonna use these, and I'm looking at the name of it, and it said Black Warrior baits, and I'm fishing on the Black Warrior, so I'm like, let's give it a whirl, and I started smashing them. So I don't know what they call this little tail, a spear tail or a sniper tail, I don't know. But it's not a paddle tail, it's long and it moves very, very well. So I was using this one right here. And this worked very, very well. A lot of the times if that doesn't work, like I said, I try to go to a smaller little boot tail, just like this. And I love to use like the bait fish colors. Every once in a while, if they're not biting them, I may go to like a chartreuse. It's got a little chartreuse paddle tail on the back. It's got a lot of little flake on it. And, you know, that works sometimes too. And, you know, when you're out fishing, I mean, it's all trial and error. You just keep trying. You know, just like bass fishing, you're going to try a jig, you're going to try a crankbait, you're going to try a jerkbait, you're going to try a topwater, maybe even a frog. Even when you see these fish there, and then you might have to finesse them, maybe with like a shaky head or maybe a drop shot. So when you see these fish there, just go through your arsenal, go through a variety of different baits. Maybe try some of this bait pop, maybe add a scent to it. I know I've watched a lot of Brandon Lester videos. He's an Elite Series pro that absolutely loves to crappie fish. And he talks about using a split shot. He doesn't even really use little jig heads. I mean, he'll use the jig heads because you have to have a hook in your soft plastic, but he uses a lot of split shots. And if they're very, very finicky, he downsizes the split shot, giving everything a very slow fall. And he says a lot of the times, if you throw everything at them and they're not biting, put that little split shot. I got two of them on here because they're really small. I needed to cast it just a little bit further. But you put a split shot on there, depending on the depth, depending on their mood, and throw it out there and allow it to slowly fall down into the strike zone. And I used this technique here, not the last time I was out, but I had used it and I was catching fish doing it. I seen those fish. They weren't very active. I threw something very subtle in there, just kind of slowly falling down between them, and they were biting it. So it does work. He talks about, you know, color not being a very big difference or a difference maker for him. He said the biggest difference that he sees is when he changes the weight size. So, you know, you could still be using this Bobby Garland bait, but you might have too heavy of a jig head on there to where you need to lighten it up, let it fall down, let it pendulum, let it do something different. And if that doesn't work, try one of these little split shots. This is actually not a jig hook. This is actually just a small little brim hook. If you can see that right there, it's just a small little brim hook. It's got a couple barbs in it to hold this soft plastic, and it comes out almost just like a little swim bait hook, as you just saw. I feed it through, poke it back up, and now it looks almost just like a little swim jig, or not a swim jig, but a jig with a jig head on it with that exposed hook, but it doesn't have any weight in it to where it will just kind of fall a little bit more free. So, you know, these are some of the baits that I typically fish. If you're not familiar with Bobby Garland baits are amazing. I usually throw them in that pearl white or that translucent color. This one that I showed you right here, it's like a gray or a silver kind of minnow style bait, of like a bait fish color. I always stick to bait fish colors. You know, we all see bait and it's, you know, these colors. It's either the white, the translucents, the grays. the silvers, and you know, I typically stick to that. But you know, that's mainly it. The biggest part is using your electronics to find these fish. And like I said, when you do, you know, you can hit that spot, leave it, go find another spot, and you can always come back to it and catch some more crappie. The craziest thing that happened to me the other day is when I was on one spot, I was on this spot for the longest time. I was catching spotted bass, and I would see these large groups or large schools of bait fish that would come in. They'd go around that tree and then they would leave. And what that did, it actually reactivated those crappie. So like I might be like, oh, come on, get a bite, trying to get a bite, and they're not biting. And then all of a sudden these shad come in and they leave. And then I throw my bait in there and they're actively feeding again. So, you know, if you find a really good spot, a high spot on a channel swing area where there's a creek or a really good pocket for them to kind of go up in, especially when it's getting cold now, you know, it can reload. And like I said, spotted bass came to check it out. The bait fish came and reactivated the crappie. So it could be really, really good. And like I said, I'm here on the Black Warrior River at Holt, the Holt section of the Black Warrior River. It's by the University of Alabama, and it is absolutely fire for crappie. The spotted bass are insane too, but the crappie fishing, no matter what time of the year it is, you can catch some absolute slabs. All right, so let's talk about how I kind of work my baits. Anytime that I find these locations of these fish, I usually like when it's kind of lit up like a Christmas tree. And what I mean by that is that, you know, if you took a tree and you threw it in the water and had no leaves on it, when you used your live imaging or your down imaging or your 360, it looks like a tree that has no leaves on it, and you can see all the individual branches. Well, when you have crappie or brim or bass in these pieces of structure, when you scan over it, it's literally going to look like that tree, but with tons of Christmas balls or Christmas lights all in it. And I call it's lit up like a Christmas tree. And when I see that, I know it's go time. So some of the ways that I like to try to entice these fish to bite is, the first thing is just kind of like mid-strolling. You throw it out there. If the treetop's here and they're all in the tree, I'll actually keep the bait suspended over that tree, giving that bait just a little action. If it has a straight tail on it, somewhat similar to this bait right here, you shake your rod tip and that tail's gonna do this. Now, if you use a bait that has like a boot tail, something like this, you don't have to use your rod tip to kind of shake the action into that. But I'll use a bunch of different baits, somewhat similar to that, and I will actually come over those fish first. Last year when I did this, especially when it was a little bit colder, not in September when it gets a little bit colder, but usually your bigger crappie will bite almost immediately. They'll bite first. And then you have to either switch up your baits or your technique to try to catch some of them out of there, or go to another spot, come back, and trick them again. So that first technique is, if this is the tree here and the fish are in it, I keep the bait above them. Sometimes get a little bit closer and work that bait right over the structure and right over the fish. Sometimes they come up and whale it. Sometimes they'll just follow it to the boat and they'll go back into the tree. The second thing I do is actually I'll pendulum my bait so it comes down, and I'll get it to go in here into the structure, and I shake it. I try to get them to bite it almost like a cat and its toy. When you move it real fast, the cat's moving crazy. So I do that, and a lot of the times I can get them to bite. And when you're coming up out of the tree, I kind of speed it up a little bit to make it seem like that bait fish is kind of fleeing and they want to hurry up and try to get it. So that's my second technique. The next one, you know, and a lot of people are like, I don't know how you do this, but with my Mega Live, I'll actually look at the tree and I'll pan off of the tree and actually throw past the tree, let it sink all the way to the bottom, and slowly drag it almost like a jig or a shaky head. And I'll work my rod tip just a little bit to allow that bait to bounce just like this on the bottom. And the last time I was out, once they stopped biting, I went to that technique and I started wearing them out again and catching some giant crappie. So they are my 3 techniques, and let's go over them again. If this is the brush, I keep it above them. If they don't bite it, I bring it through them. And if they don't bite that, I drag it down along the bottom next to that cover. Obviously, you can't throw it past it and have it go all the way down and drag it down between that. You know, it's going to get all hung up into those branches and stuff like that. But with your Mega Live or your live imaging, you can literally look at that structure, pan away to not see it, and then come back and actually see the edge of that structure, make that exact cast and bring it down along it. And if they're anywhere in there down below, and sometimes those bigger crappie or bass will be down on the bottom, and when you trickle that little bait by them, they eating it. So they are my techniques on kind of how to get that bite. So let's get into the gear real quick. I usually use one rod. It's one of my bass fishing rods, and the reason why I use this is the line, and we'll get to that in a second. But this is a 7.2 medium powered spinning rod, a 2500 series reel, and I like the 2500 series because it allows me to make a little bit further of a cast. But what really makes these casts go a little bit further is the line size. The diameter of the line plays a huge factor in making longer casts. So this is 8-pound braid, and my leaders usually range from 6 to 10, especially if I'm fishing for crappie. If I can get away with 6, I definitely will. Sometimes if you have to go lighter, maybe 4 or a little bit lighter than that because they're a little line shy, I guess you can say. You know, go down just a little bit, but this diameter of this line is amazing. And like I said, this is my bass rod, and I've caught spotted bass from 3 pounds to 5 pounds, and I've even caught the hybrid striped bass or stripers that range from like 15 to 25 pounds. So if this is strong enough for those types of fish, it's definitely going to reel in a crappie. But this is my setup. Like I said in previous videos, I actually have a smaller rod. This is what I started off with. And I mean, it's super small. Look how small this is. I think it's a, let's see how long it is. It's a 5.6, so it's super small. It's lightweight, and when you catch them on this stuff, it's actually a little bit lighter. It's the laser light from Speed Spin, I guess the Lose. But when you catch them on this joker right here, I mean, it is fun. It literally wears your wrist out because you have to, more so, I guess, you know, catch them and pull them in with your wrist. But the same thing on here. I got about 8-pound line, or the 8-pound Power Pro braid, and then my leader is going to be 6-pound. And like I said, you know, this 6-pound and this 8-pound leader is going to bend out the majority of these hooks to where when you bring them back, you can actually straighten them back out, or not straighten them back out, hook them back in, or whatever you want to say, bend them back to where you can use them basically the entire day. Well guys, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed some of those catches. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see upcoming videos, please subscribe. I'm asking you now, please subscribe to the channel. I'd absolutely love it. It would help the channel out. And you know, I always appreciate you guys coming along. Continue to follow Bassn Buddy, and I'll see you next time. Peace.